Good morning, GitLab. Today is February 11th, and just want to welcome everybody. It's a busy day at GitLab. There is the Vancouver SKO, or sales kickoff meeting today, so today's meeting might be lightly attended. My name is Christopher Leffelholtz. I am the Senior Director of Development, and this is the Development Group Conversation. And just another bit of trivia today on February 11th also is pitchers and catchers reporting for American baseball. So it's the kickoff of spring in some ways in Arizona and Florida. Cool. I will go ahead and start with questions. And then if we have a pause, I'll talk a little bit about what's in the slides. But Emily already has a question. So Emily, you can go ahead and verbalize your first question.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. So I saw when you're talking about ramping up the number of MRs per month, you mentioned backfilling CVEs. Thanks for the link. Can you help explain how that helps get to more MRs per month?
Sure, great question. So first of all, let's talk about what CVEs are. CVEs stands for Common Vulnerability Exposure. Basically, this is an international organization that focuses on code vulnerabilities within software in general. So as an example, all the Intel-related vulnerabilities had CVEs associated with them, and that's typically how they're reported and managed. So one of the things that happens is that obviously this group or conglomerate puts out a number of these in a given year. And one of the things that we've started to work on is basically incorporating that into our database, both to notify and also to basically use in our scanning technologies to basically catch these issues as customers run into them to basically prevent them. As an example, package updates is the best example of that, where you can do a package scan and say, okay, we're not up to date on this scan, so therefore we're vulnerable to this particular problem associated with it. In our particular case, we were behind because we were doing it manually. So we built some automation software, and we've been basically able to start backfilling for the last 3 years. There was some debate about how far to go back. 3 years felt about right, just given normal enterprise software and just how most organizations work in that fashion. And because of that, we have a backlog that we're basically going through that should end. I think of March right now is currently the time frame that we're expecting to be kind of caught up in that regard. And I don't know if Todd Stadelhofer is on the line, but Todd, if you are, I don't know if you would have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'm here. Exactly. Christopher covered it pretty well. Basically, the big challenge we had is we do actually review every single one of these CVEs that we bring in. So there was a debate on whether we should be bulk uploading or if we should do them individually, as we have been. We stuck with individual because we really do need to review every single one. So it felt like sort of a truer sense of what we're actually doing. And as Christopher mentioned, we will be going back for several years to basically create a comprehensive data set.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Excellent. Looks like there are currently no other questions, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. One, there are 4 Easter eggs in the document if you want to go hunt and find those. The other thing I want to notice is that we do have an operations analyst starting next week. We're super excited to have that person join us. They start on February 18th, not the Monday, because that's a US holiday. So we're having them start on Tuesday for that purpose. The other thing is we did update our vision and mission. Really appreciate the fact that Erica is pushing us to do this. This is a good example where I appreciate that we really need to be aspirational, and this was an opportunity for us to do that. I didn't get a lot of feedback on this because I merged it very quickly, but I'm welcome to feedback associated with this. And there's an engineering managers call that we've started tomorrow for office hours, where we're going to talk about a couple aspects of that in that discussion. And then obviously MRs are up, so we're super excited about that. We're also super excited for growth, though growth is still pending some final budget decisions associated with final financial decisions. We're definitely focused on maintainers and getting that down, as well as trainees associated with that. And last but not least, just to cover on FY21 Q1 OKRs, we're definitely going to be focused on customer related features that need to be delivered for customer revenue, as well as building a great team and also obviously our MR rate associated with that. So those are all important things associated with that. Cool. I've lost, there it is. So I'll stop sharing again. And Sam, you have the next question.
Yeah, thanks for the slides and the presentation, Christopher. A couple months ago, we started talking more about availability over velocity. Could you speak a little bit more to how that's been in the past couple months? What sort of changes we've seen as a result of that?
Yeah, good question. We haven't seen a slowdown in velocity, obviously, from an MR rate from that perspective. So that's been encouraging. We have added, the past couple of months, we've added a new definition of done, where we've added some better definitions around things that we should test associated with that. Feedback from the infrastructure team, I believe in January, is that things have been fairly stable. So that's encouraging as well. Though I don't know if that's resulted in actual numbers going up from an availability perspective versus just anecdotal data associated with that. But there's definitely been strong feedback. The January was a pretty good month for us as far as outages and those kinds of things. The other thing is we just instituted, and I'm sure Mech will be talking about it tomorrow, we've instituted a new severity level system around availability specifically to basically talk about when we should fix issues and the urgency of fixing those issues. And that got instituted just in the last couple of weeks, so we haven't really seen results from that, but that's definitely a piece of it. And then the last piece is we're averaging about 20 MRs a month related to infrastructure related issues that are specifically focused on availability and other things that are hurting our efforts on hurting our efforts related to infrastructure and the .com site. So it feels like we're producing a pretty good clip there as well.
Great, thanks for that answer.
No problem.
Thanks for the call, Christopher. I did add a link in the doc for that. I think it's now in the handbook.
Thanks, Mech. Appreciate it. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mech, from that perspective.
I think this is a good change. We'll be adding some prioritization guardrails because before engineers and PMs are used to, hey, P1, S1, P2, S2, but in reality, it shouldn't be. So we are highlighting that S1 and S2 availability are both P1s because we want to speed up the availability and stability of .com. And this also respects the product prioritization documentation. And we will have some automation around this. So fast feedback, if you have an S1 and it's set as a P4, we just bounce it back because it shouldn't be a P4. So partly education, partly automation to help make it more efficient. Thank you. There's no questions. I'm going to say, Christopher, your Easter egg is hard this time.
Are they?
I scanned every slide. I can't find it yet. So
okay. Well, this is
6. Is
I'm
that
sorry?
the 246?
Yes.
Okay.
Did it come up correctly? I'm always worried when I do this. So I'll walk through. They're actually not too bad here. It's I'm a little top heavy today in regards to at the front of the slide. So on the very first slide, 11 is a hot link to Yo11, which is a term used in gambling related to rolling the number 11 in craps. Number 2, fast performance. goes to the website of Ford versus Ferrari, which is an excellent movie on performance that I recommend anybody in recent memory. Or recommend because it just recently came out on video, I should say. Emily mentioned the 246. 246, just because I was in a numerology mood, turns back the factorials associated with the number 246. And then last but not least, again, on the numbers theme, questions. If you're going to have questions, you got to have answers. And the answer is 42, the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Although this is obviously a little bit dated because the book is from the 80s, so I may be dating myself in that process. Cool. Since there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and throw one of the questions that's up for tomorrow from John. There'll probably be further discussion on it, but I'll add it in here, which is from the development group call slides. We use data to make decisions. If data doesn't exist, we use anecdotal data. If anecdotal information isn't available, first principles. You wanted me to provide a practical example of how this would play out in real life. And are there any recent decisions that follow this approach? I'll need to think about more recent decisions, but I will bring up one that we actually used last spring, which was we had a working group around MR performance and basic pieces of information. So as an example, we had a number of theories around different ideas associated with that effort. And probably the best example was we felt like the MR rate could be improved if we were ambitious. So, this is basically the 100% or 120% planning versus what the team is actually capable of. And as part of that, we took a survey of folks and got a pretty strong feedback that basically said to the effect of that folks didn't feel that the ambition actually made them work more effectively. It actually demotivated them in that regard. So that's an example where we got some feedback from individuals as a survey and realized that the data didn't really represent what the intent was for that ambition. Similarly, we had a couple other ones where we said, MR rate was decreased in November and December of last year because we had vacations. And what we actually found is that actually, if you looked at it, taking out the vacation days, we were actually running about roughly the same rate as previously. So that's a good example where using data to kind of represent that has been super valuable associated with that. I'm trying to think of a more recent example. But one's not coming to mind. So that's one that I'll include the link later on, but the working group in particular was really good about that. And we'll need to be thinking about additional ways to do that in the future. Mac, do you want to verbalize your question?
Sure, thank you. So we've been working together on the cycle time for a while. I want to see what your read is on the current numbers and maybe feedback from your reports and team as well, if the number that we see is correct, and are there any hot spots you want to call out for us to improve the review time?
Yeah, good question. This is one area that I wish I had been investing more time in January and just didn't get to associated with that. So I don't know if I necessarily am at the point where I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with this. One thing that we did set out was an OKR to basically reduce it by a day. Right now, the main focus to reduce it by a day has been focused on the number of maintainers and getting that appropriate. We're averaging about 130, like last month we averaged 130 MRs a day. So that's a lot of MRs to both one produce, but then also to review associated with that, right? So granted, we have a large population working on the code base, but still fundamentally that's a pretty high count associated with that. So that's been the main focus, is how do we increase the number of trainees, which then will turn into additional maintainers. And John Duplessis also has a effort going on to basically think in terms of domain maintainers to hopefully break it up so that one, the barrier to entry to become a maintainer is lower, but also to allow us to have better focused attention depending on which part of the code base people are looking at. We've already done that with DB as an example, and then obviously front end and back end, but we'll continue in that fashion. As far as hotspots, I don't have any good answers other than just right now the overall number seems to be higher than we would like, and we've seen a correlation between higher times historically and our velocity.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Cool. Well, since there are no further questions, I'm going to close this down. I want to thank everybody for a great group conversation, good questions, and really appreciate everyone attending today. Thank you very much.